We have such a responsibility to treat our consciousness with reverence. And when we treat our own consciousness with reverence, we cannot help but treat other people's with reverence as well. I really believe that the sky is the limit in terms of everything from building wealth to creating influence to creating movements like you two are doing. I think that that's where the real work is liberating consciousness.
Hey everyone, it's Tamara Thompson with Women Unlocking Wealth, and I'm here with my co-host Danielle Thompson.
Hey everybody.
We're super excited and grateful for our next guest, Dr. Robyn McKay. She's here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where we're recording today. She has a PhD in counseling psychology, correct?
Yeah. PhD in from Kansas.
Kansas?
I know.
I love that.
Thank you.
You're an award-winning therapist. Yeah. You're the creator of the Bewitched show, which is an incredible show. I know we're going to talk about a lot of this fun stuff as well, but we're just super grateful to have you here. You have such a great track record in what you do and what you've been able to provide for people. And we're just super grateful to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
It really means a lot.
Oh, well, I'm super grateful to meet you in person. I think the conversations are just energetic and I don't know, you get to see people, meet people, give them hugs and
eye to eye and heart to heart.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah.
That's my new tagline.
No, I'm just kidding. You can have it.
I've got it. I've accepted it. I've accepted it in. Well, we're super grateful. I'd love you to tell a little bit more about your backstory, kind of like your background. You've got an extensive side, as a therapist, and you've gone through so much, but you've helped a lot of people and you've done a lot of cool things behind the scenes in silent too that I'd love to talk about later.
I have. Holy smokes. Well, I like to start with what I wanted to be when I grew up. When I was 5, I wanted to be a doctor and I wanted to write books. One day I decided I would start writing my first book and I took out a notepad. Do you remember those Big Chief notepads?
Yes.
From elementary school. So I took one of those out. I had a pencil all sharpened. I laid down on the bedroom floor and started to write. And I realized 2 things very quickly. One is I didn't know all my letters yet. But 2, probably the more appalling thing was there was nothing that I didn't have anything to say. And it was quite shocking. So I'm pretty sure that was my first existential crisis at 5.
I think we've all had that.
I know. I don't know at 5, but maybe early on. I do think that women who are talented, who are very, very bright, do often are kind of early adopters to existential crises. So it's kind of a theme in the women who I work with now. And then I was a science girl. So I got my first microscope when I was like 10, and I was so disappointed in the light source because it was a mirror, and it was just,
I would be disappointed too.
I'm disappointing. But I was a science girl. I was a writer and was nurtured in that direction as a Gen X girl to go into either medicine or law or engineering. Those were kind of the big 3. And I thought, well, I'll go to medical school. Since I wanted to be a doctor since I was 5, that's what I should do. And got my undergrad in biology, didn't get into medical school the first time I tried, didn't have a mentor say, a lot of people don't get in the first time, go back and go again. So I found my way into biotech in the microbiology lab. I worked with very dangerous microorganisms before 9/11. So this was like working on some government contracts and things like that on organisms that we would have seen later on in the early 2000s. It became sort of popular in the popular is a bad word to use for deadly microorganisms. But you get my point. Yes. Working in the lab and recognizing that I wasn't like everybody else. I already knew that, but then putting me in a lab with a bunch of like real scientists, even though I became eventually a social scientist, I wasn't like them. I made eye contact. I wanted to connect with people. And I had always loved mentoring and guiding. I taught swimming lessons when I was in undergrad. So I had all of this like people experience, but in the lab working with microorganisms, there weren't, and my colleagues were there, but I burned out pretty quickly for a lot of different reasons. And the best thing that came out of that whole time in my life was that a woman stepped into a space with us. We were at a round table. She was recruiting mentors for this new program, mentoring women in STEM. And I was like, yes, that's for me. So that really put me on my trajectory to get my PhD in psychology.
Interesting.
I know this is a really long story, but
It's a good one.
Oh,
It's a
like
good one. I have a biology degree too.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
I love that. You're a STEM girl. High five.
Yeah.
She was like, I don't use it now.
I don't not anymore.
But I think that it's so interesting how just learning how to think about the world in terms of biology, in terms of science, is such an important thing, even now in anything that we do. It's strategic thinking. And it's just a worldview, I think, as well, that I think, for me anyway. So,
Yeah, for sure.
So I go back to school. I get my PhD in counseling psychology. And one of the reasons I believe I was selected for the University of Kansas counseling psych program was because of this background I had in mentoring young women in STEM. And at that time, so this would have been like 2002, 2003, there was still such a paucity of young women going into STEM fields, especially engineering, but also the broader STEM. So that was my focus all through grad school, was supporting girls in STEM. In fact, here's my story. This is my life-changing story from grad school. It was right after my mentor, Barb, arrived at KU. She got an appointment as a distinguished professor. So it's like the queen of counseling psychology was there. And I was chosen to be the research assistant for her. I was doing research on just summer programs for some of the girls that we were working with in the projects that we were working on. I found this really cool, amazing summer camp. You'll love it, Sam girl. It was sponsored by the School of Engineering at Kansas. And the advertisement was so cool. You got to build bridges, blow stuff up, launch rockets. Sounds cool, right?
Yeah.
Right. Guess what? Last sentence in the advertisement: for boys only.
What?
I know. 2005. It was not 1972 pre-Title IX. Like, what are we doing here? So in only the way an indignant graduate student can, I made my way down to the Starbucks on Mass Street in Lawrence, Kansas, where Barb was working. And I stood there in front of her and spouted all the statistics. How dare they, I said. Only 10% of women go into engineering anyway, and now they're excluding them from the summer camp. What are they doing? And Barb just leaned back, very calm, cool, and collected, looked at me over her reading glasses, and she said this. She said, "You're at a point in your career where you can't just be mad about this. You have to do something." And that was like a mic drop for me. And it really shut me up for about 3 years because I didn't know what to do. I just kept on, I held that and I kept on doing my studies. I had to study for comps. I had to do all of the stuff to get graduated. And then I landed here at Arizona State University. By here, I mean in Arizona, because that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
And I was out at the Polytechnic campus, which is a smaller campus. I was there for a year looking around and see all these girls in the engineering classes, very smart, very intuitive, creative, and they didn't have any place to land. There was no Society of Women Engineers chapter out there. I'm not an engineer, as you know, I'm a biology major. So I remember sitting there with my colleagues at the end of the first year, and we were talking about what we wanted to do next. And for me as a psychologist on campus, I said, I think I want to start a Women in Science and Engineering program. And they got real quiet. And then suddenly within 2 weeks, I was in front of the dean of students and I was in front of the dean of the school. I was afraid I was in trouble. I was not. They were encouraging me to do that. And that was the answer to to my question those years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, with Barb at that Starbucks in Lawrence, which was, this is my solution to the question of what do we do about this? This can't happen anymore. And Wise went on to win some awards and I think it's still going in some capacity all these years later. But that Women in Science and Engineering program was about leadership. It was about knowing yourself, knowing your creative flow, knowing why you feel so different from everybody else, because that is a major question that I find a lot of the women who come into my space really are asking. They say, I just feel different. Can you relate to that?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, sometimes, and we can't always understand why, especially in a culture that tells us you're no better than anybody else and everybody else or everyone is supposed to be the same in some ways. But when you've got a fast brain in your head, when you see things differently than most other people, when you're more creative, something like that, it just makes it a a big question mark. And there's this sort of cognitive dissonance, I would say, between what the culture tells us we're supposed to be and then who we actually are as individual creators. Does that make sense?
It does. By stepping into going into, helping more women in this side, and they're like, we want you to help with this. Is that kind of how you evolved into the way you work with women today?
Yes.
Like on the leadership front, coaching,
Absolutely.
things like that.
It's exactly everything that I was doing back then, everything that I developed back at ASU, and even before that when I was at Kansas working as a grad student, still informs the work that I do today, helping women understand who they are from a personality perspective.
Is it primarily like high achieving women?
Yeah, 100%. So it's high achieving, accomplished.
Doctors, law firms.
They're actually the grown-up smart girls. So the girls who I was working with while they were in undergrad are now in their 30s, but it's like they're the physicians, the engineers, the attorneys, all of those who actually tracked into those fields that I thought I was supposed to go into when I was a kid. They're actually there doing the work, burning out, asking, like, is this all there is? And they're doing at this point, especially after COVID, just so much soul searching. Like, I can't see myself doing this for another 25 years or 15 years or whatever it is. And they've just reached a point in their lives where they've accomplished so much already. Financially, especially, I think at this point with the Gen X women, we're just in a place where we can do whatever we want to now. And some of them are retiring and looking at, they're doing some pretty wild things. Like they're leaving their traditional jobs as engineers, financial folks, whatever, you name it. And they're studying astrology.
Yes.
And they're studying human design. And they're learning about their psychic abilities and their intuition and all of those things. And my work has always been bridging science and spirit, reason and intuition, and my clients' heads and their hearts.
It's so needed now, though. I think that a lot of things were kind of repressed, like growing up. I know myself, Danielle and I, we were even talking about this, even the past probably like 5 years, we've stepped more into like our spiritual side of being and trusting that intuition and the abilities that we do have as well, and tapping into that and following our guides and different things that were like, this is right, this is not, but I think a lot of the times, like 10 years ago, or even like a dozen years ago, like I wouldn't have been able to say, some of the things I even talk about today without being looked at or thought like, this isn't normal or traditional on that side.
What's interesting is that we were just at a mastermind last week, and there was a lot of ER doctors there that are tapping into their spirituality as well. And some of them are teaching like how to be more calm during chaos, like ER doctor. I mean, that's so relevant. But some of them even went into detail about being able to see the souls leave the body in the hospitals.
Yes, this is what is so important to the healers of the world. And many of us find our way into traditional practices like psychology, like medicine. And yet we have these capabilities that go beyond what we were taught in grad school or professional school. Nobody wanted to talk about it until now. And I really attribute a lot of that to the rise in women in these fields as well. I don't mean to do this whole dichotomy of men and women thing, but because we know that there are more within group differences than there are between group differences. That's just basic statistics. However, these women who go into, they're very bright, they're emotionally intelligent, and emotional intelligence is one of my like key things that I'm looking at when I'm helping them understand their spiritual intelligence, their capacity to alter their consciousness in the service of somebody else, their ability to see the souls.
That's so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that is something, the spiritual intelligence piece is sort of on the horizon for us, I believe, as leaders in our fields, to really be able to understand that the intuition is more than just some kind of touchy-feely, woo-woo thing. It's a legitimate technology that some of us have more access to than others, talking about being different from everybody else.
What would be an example of like, so we know what emotional intelligence is, but when you're talking about spiritual intelligence, like what would be a good example for what that looks like?
Let's talk about, I want to go back to the definition first. Okay. The way that I understand spiritual intelligence is there's one piece that's really important, the capacity to alter consciousness, to move from beta waking state into an alpha creative state, or even down into the deeper delta or theta states of consciousness. And creativity runs on the gamma states of consciousness. So here's an example of spiritual intelligence, when you can go into flow, when you lose track of time, you become completely absorbed and engaged in the activity, when whatever it is that you're doing is challenging you, but your abilities just rise to meet the challenge. That would be an example of flow, which is, I will say, consistent with how I would understand spiritual intelligence. Now, when I look at spiritual intelligence, I'm also looking at how is the dynamic changing as a result of, I'll use me as an example, my presence. If I'm holding the signal of alpha state, or if I'm even with changing my breath rate or changing the positioning of my hands and people can move with me, then we know that there's something changing under the surface or unconsciously or subconsciously. That doesn't make a difference to me so much as what's the outcome. So are you feeling better as a result of that? Are you able to see the world in a different way as a result of being in a space with somebody who's spiritually intelligent? And, I suppose it's more of a fancy, sciencey word for being a healer, being an energy healer or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like that we owe it to this beautiful community of healers that we have, and the psychics and the oracles and all of us, to really sort of codify this in a way that makes it, I want to say, a little bit easier for people who aren't like us to step in and actually be helped by us.
We had an experience at this mastermind that we went to last week in Austin. And there were a lot of spiritual beings there. And there was a gentleman visiting from Sedona, and
those Sedona folks.
I love Sedona.
We did a deep meditation through some different things, and things that I'm not normally like with the deep breath work and things like that. And I went into a deep meditation, but it was the first time that I was able to really see things, figures, faces come through in the visualization. But I thought it was intriguing because there was a woman that Danielle met the evening before that literally texted her a message during the.
Oh, geez.
But these are things that we haven't tapped into ourselves, you know. But she literally wrote, she's like, there was a portal that opened in front of Danielle when she was going through this thing. But it was so interesting because I went and talked to a gentleman that was across the room from me, and he described exactly what he was seeing through the meditation. We saw exactly the same thing, the same color tones, the same images and faces coming through in the same spots. And the way that the gentleman that was talking about is like, you're in this room with these beings that you can also tap into each other's energies and visualizations, which I found very intriguing to me. So that was the first time I had actually experienced that. I thought that was just like a very interesting.
Kind of a mind-blowing experience too, especially when you're validated by somebody else who's seeing something similar.
Yes.
Here's what I want to say about all of this. We're talking about consciousness. And how we use our consciousness, how we move, how we connect with other people's consciousness. And if I have learned nothing in the past 25 years that I've been doing this work, it is that we each have a responsibility to our own consciousness. In fact, my mission in my life at this point is to retrieve, restore, protect, and preserve human consciousness. And what that means to me is that we each also have a responsibility to give consent fully and openly, and to ask for consent as well. And often I'm finding it's kind of a gray area over here in spiritual land where, somebody will sit. I had an experience recently. I was on somebody's podcast and he's like, okay, close your eyes and like, imagine. I'm like, you didn't ask me for permission for this. Oh, no, you're not. No.
Yeah.
And so we have to be very mindful of this because consciousness continues to be sort of the wild, wild west, I would say.
It is, yeah.
And we have an ethical responsibility to do no harm as healers, I believe. I firmly believe that. And I think that because we haven't really codified what it actually means, whether we're talking about spiritual intelligence or consciousness, or I suppose consciousness has been codified, but we don't talk about it in that way, I think, enough. We still are sort of doing this airy-fairy thing. Oh, let's pull a card and see what happens. Let's whatever. No, I think that we have such a responsibility to treat our consciousness with reverence. Does that make sense?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And when we treat our own consciousness with reverence, we cannot help but treat other people's with reverence as well.
Do you think, like, kind of changing the subject a little bit,
Sure.
The reframing? So when you're working with women, you know, in their this state that they're growing, one of the things that we like to talk about on this show is like helping support these women in their journey. If it's people working with you or people working with us or other individuals, there's really this kind of common theme that I've seen across with women in business, just in general, because we like to help women unlock their, you know, potential to grow, and not feel guilty about things or shameful or step into something that has a bigger mindset, especially when it's about generating wealth or
For sure.
or making more money when that matters, you know, because the more money that you make, the more you can impact others and help more people. And I think a lot of people that we've spoken to on some people's mindsets, they just have this this thought. Maybe it's maybe it's a past thought, maybe it's the way they were raised, maybe it was something like that. Do you also help women through that process too? Because we've talked to many women throughout different series and stuff like that. And I think there's a common thing that we've wanted to help more women get to that point too.
Yes, and I have a few things to say about mindset. Mindset is really superficial. And if you want to work on somebody's mindset, maybe go to cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
But if you want to get at the root, what I really find is that so much of it has to do with trauma.
Yes.
We all have, just by virtue of living here as humans, we all experience trauma.
Yeah.
And the way that I experience the trauma is that it kind of sits out here in our fields, kind of knotted up, and our consciousness gets knotted up with that. And over time, yes, it can affect how we're thinking about things, which is the superficial level. That's the mindset to me.
Okay. Makes sense.
We have to get down into the energetic root of what is that. I'm pointing right here. Like,
what's that root?
What is that right here?
Yeah.
Energetically, and when we can untangle that trauma knot and retrieve. Remember, I said retrieve the consciousness. Retrieve the consciousness from that trauma knot. Bring it back into the heart. Then I'm filled up again with myself, with my own consciousness. When we have access to all of our consciousness, I really believe that the sky is the limit in terms of everything from building wealth to creating influence to creating movements like you two are doing. I think that that's where the real work is liberating consciousness.
I love that, you know, because a lot of the times there's areas of, like you said, I loved how you actually put the framework around the word mindset, because I do believe it's totally overused and there's so much more deep impact, just like you said, the root of that. And so I love that you reframed it that way, because it is really overused.
Well, it simplifies things, and then you end up blaming yourself. Oh, my mindset. Well, no. Can we stop with the mindset, please? Only because, to your point, it's overused, but it doesn't get at what the root is. And then it makes you wrong. You must not be, there's something wrong with you if you can't get your mindset right. Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let's find out like what's behind all of that. And that's the work that's the spiritual intelligence work. That's the work of going into the energy body and really tracking. I am kind of a tracker of consciousness too. So I can go in and find like, where is that knot right there? It's right there.
That's beautiful.
And then we untangle and we just simply restore it to you as the rightful guardian, owner, and steward of your consciousness. Then your yes is yes and your no is no, and you don't have to be worried about being influenced by some Yahoo who's, I'm sorry, I didn't. No, there's actually. But there are a lot of Yahoos out there who simply, there are Yahoos out there who take advantage of human consciousness. A lot of it isn't necessarily malicious, but it certainly is misaligned.
For their own gain. It's not necessarily for them helping others, so they say. On that side. So there's a lot of individuals out there at this point in our lives. When we come across individuals, we trust that side of the sense of knowing or
the discernment. And that is the other piece, is that the more clear you are in your consciousness, the easier it is to discern what's nonsense from what's truth.
Well, and it's great to just be able to be like, I know no, this is a no.
Yes.
Or a quick yes, I'm going to take action. Yes. This feels right.
Yes.
So I love that ability to just kind of step into that. If something's like a I'm not quite sure. I'm like, maybe that's not right. that's something's holding me back for some reason on that side. So I love this conversation. I think we should do a part 2.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you just for joining us, just to kind of sharing a little bit more of your backstory, just us getting to know you a little bit more. But I'm definitely super grateful and excited to have you join us again in the future on the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to come back.
Can you share with our audience a little bit more about how they can connect with you?
Sure.
Where do you hang out? A little bit more on the podcast.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Okay. Well, I hang out over on Instagram, Robyn McKay, PhD. And I have a cutie little Facebook group that I love. It's called the House of Sheology.
Oh,
I love that.
Yeah. And that's where we hang out for the podcast. And then I co-created this podcast called Bewitched, Breaking the Spell After Spiritual Mentoring Goes Wrong. Ask me how I know how important consciousness is after you listen to that podcast. Anyway, you can find that on my podcast, which is Sheology by Dr. Robyn McKay.
Well, I'm excited to take a listen to more episodes on that and get to know you more. And I'm super, super grateful for you being here today.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me.
And those of you watching this episode, be sure to subscribe, comment, follow Robyn on social media, join her Facebook group, check out her podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode.